Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Town of Dewey Beach Monthly Town Commissioner Meeting, and we did have an executive session. It's being held at Dewey Beach Life Saving Station at 1 Dagsworthy Avenue, Dewey Beach, Delaware, and also it's live via Zoom. Today is Friday, January 13th, 2023, and it is, right now it's 3:31. With that being said, I'd like to convene the Town Commissioner meeting. The first item is for the adoption of agenda. Commissioners, can I get a motion for the adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Gibbings. All in favor, say aye.
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 That's unanimous. Opening ceremonies, first things, please, everyone remove their hats and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With that, from a roll call perspective, Commissioner Bauer,
Present.
Commissioner Persinger,
Present.
Commissioner Jazinski,
Present.
Commissioner Gibbings,
Here.
Commissioner / Mayor Bill Stevens is here. We also have Fred Townsend, our counsel, Lieutenant Hocker, and our town manager, Bill Zolper, as well as members of our community. It's good to see everybody. I'm going to open up, and this is more of a format for everyone. Public comment is going to be allowed in each agenda item, so you can come up and talk about it. If you have any items of which you would like, and because of the nature of how these meetings can go from time to time, we will limit to 3 minutes, and if it's over 3 minutes, we'll cap it. We'll ask for anybody that's on Zoom to keep themselves muted until their agenda item is called for. But if there's anyone here that has a public comment in regards to a non-agended item, at this point in time, please come forward and have any public comment. Please.
Good afternoon. Do I speak from here?
Yeah, you got to get there. Name, address, and rank.
Good afternoon. My name is Nick Kroll, 1301 Coastal Highway, Unit 453. On July 29th, I was assaulted at the Rudder by an employee of the Rusty Rudder. I responded to Dewey Police Department on August 3rd and decided to file a report. I was there with my wife. We had just finished dinner. It was like about 8:50 at night when we were at the Rudder. Officer Day, seasonal officer, handled my initial report. I gave him the information. It was very brief, very short. I could tell a level of disinterest in his report taking. So I began to start a file as a result of what I perceived to be a lack of interest and concern. He called me about an hour later, asked for some additional follow-up information. I gave him my wife's information as a witness because she was there with me. I didn't hear anything from Dewey PD for about a week. So on August 10th, I called, asked to speak to Officer Day, left a message for him. There was no return call made. I let a couple more weeks go by, and on August 31st, I called and left a message for Sergeant Dempsey. I figured I'd elevate it to the supervisor. Dempsey called me back that afternoon. I asked that he pulled a report. He pulled a report, and the bartender and bouncer were interviewed at the Rudder, and their statements matched that of mine. We were non-combative, non-argumentative. We were sober. We were in the process of leaving, and the bouncer forcibly grabbed me in a manner that did restrict my airflow, my breathing, and in my opinion, elevated to the level of assault. Sergeant Dempsey left it at that he will follow up with the AG's office and explore the elements of the crime, and does it elevate to a criminal charge. I didn't hear anything from Sergeant Dempsey, and about 2 months went by. So I followed up again on October 26th and left a message for Sergeant Dempsey and requested a return phone call. I didn't hear anything after that phone call. So on November 7th, I decided to call Sussex County Attorney General's office and inquire within myself as far as where the report stands, where does a review from their end. The woman I spoke to there stated that she could not find this in lease or Delgis anywhere, that I am not listed as a suspect, not suspect, excuse me, as a victim, as a reporting person, anything to that effect. So she also went on to say that this isn't the first time that Dewey Police Department has incidences that arise and they aren't documented through the state central reporting system, but that she would send Sergeant Dempsey an email immediately and inquiring. So after that phone call on the 7th of November, I called Dewey PD and asked to speak to Sergeant Dempsey and or a supervisor that I could speak with, and I was advised that no one was available. So I left my contact for a call back. On November 11th, I still had not heard from anyone within Dewey PD, so I responded to the police station and asked to speak to Sergeant Dempsey and or a supervisor. And I was advised again that there was no one available, but to call back on November 14th. So I called back on the 14th of November and I left a message for Sergeant Dempsey. He did call me back that afternoon and we spoke regarding the case. He had advised that he would meet with my wife. He would travel. She works in Dover 1 day a week, or we'd meet down here. And I told him that I will speak with her to review her schedule, and I'll call him right back with her availability and contact information. I called him on the 16th of November and the 17th, each time leaving a voicemail on his work cell phone number with her contact information. Myself and or my wife have not heard from Sergeant Dempsey regarding a follow-up to take her witness statement. So on December 29th, I let, again, a month and a half go by. I called the Dewey Police Department once again, and I asked to speak with a supervisor, this time above the rank of sergeant. I asked to speak with a lieutenant. They dispatch took my information, said they would pass it along, and I am still yet to hear from anyone within Dewey Police Department. Now, I spent 5 years as a police officer in one of the largest departments, municipalities in Delaware. And I don't bring that up because I expect any special treatment, but I have an understanding of how this works. I expect fair treatment. You know, I expect that if people are being victimized, if there's a victim, that the investigation is thoroughly conducted. You know, and from a customer service standpoint, follow-up, communication. So when I look up the criminal charges, you know, at a minimum, offensive touching, if we read it, you know, it's intentionally touches another person with a member of his or her body and or with any instrument, knowing that the person is there, likely to cause offense or alarm to that person. Now, when I was grabbed from behind, completely snuck without any indication that was going to happen, the bouncer squeezed me in a manner that I struggled to breathe. That was concerning to me at the time. And when I read the charge on aggressive strangulation, it simply says a technique intended to restrict another person's airway or prevent the breathing or to restrict the breathing of another person. I brought this to the attention of Seasonal Officer Day and Sergeant Dempsey, and my case has been closed by the Dewey Police Department without even a follow-up with my wife as a witness. They did interview the bouncer and the bartender, and they said exactly what I said. Their story matches mine. So it leaves me as a couple questions. You know, when I look at mayor, council, and Dewey Police Department, how much offensive touching is enough offensive touching to qualify me as a victim? You know, what has to happen to me for my police department to consider me an actual victim? You know, then I wonder, who is Dewey Police protecting here? Is it big business? I mean, let's be honest, I was in one of the largest proprietors establishments in town. Or is it statistics? Do we not pursue charges to keep stats down? I mean, I'm a property owner here. I'm invested in the town. Of course, I want this to appear as a safe place. But at what cost? What other incidences get swept under the rug or aren't pursued? Since when is it the police departments to be judge and juror? You know, I have an understanding of how to write warrants, and I say with this with the utmost respect. my 5 years on the street in one of the largest call volume agencies in Delaware, I've seen and done more, and again, respectfully so, than I believe Dewey Police would see here in 20 years. I've signed hundreds and hundreds of warrants. This is easy. This is cake. And I don't know why it's so problematic for it to be followed through. At a minimum, interview a witness and enter it in to the state database. But Dewey Police took it upon themselves to say, you know what, we're not going to have a thorough investigation, even though the victim statement matches that of the suspects, and we're not going to interview the witnesses. I haven't even been provided a case number. Every time I call your police department dispatch, ask me, do you have a case number to reference? I can't even give them that. I'm out of my 3 minutes, I assume.
Yeah, Mr. Kroll.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you coming forward. I know it's not easy. And obviously from public comment, it's not a private, there's no ability for us to respond at this
Sure,
point in time.
understood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here for public comment? Okay, anybody in the waiting room? Okay. All right. First item on the agenda is to have a motion to approve the minutes of December 16th, 2022, monthly town commissioners meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
It's so easy for the local ones. And a second?
I will second it.
Any items for discussion?
Yeah, actually, this is really a question for Fred. So the minutes, everything in them seemed accurate to me, but the minutes are very detailed now compared to what we usually do. And I just want your guidance going forward. My only concern is, you know, these meetings are obviously taped and recorded and people have a lot of conversation. And these, I think they accurately portray what was going on. But what I wonder is when we make a permanent record, and rather than just say the topics that were discussed, but actually say kind of what people said, do we put ourselves potentially in a bad situation? I'm not asking that we don't approve these. I'm more asking that these minutes go into detail about what people said, whereas we have a recording which may or may not exactly match that if someone were to challenge something. It's that, I'm just asking if it's an issue, because these are very detailed.
Well, it's really a style issue, as long as you meet the minimum criteria, and the fact that there is a tape and there isn't usually a video.
Okay.
It is probably lessening the need to go into the detail that the municipalities like this were accustomed to years and years ago.
Okay.
So as long as you meet the minimum criteria, we don't have to go into great detail. I didn't know that there had been a sea change in the manner in which the minutes were being prepared. But as long as in good faith you're voting to adopt the minutes, and it's your belief that the minutes accurately reflect the meeting, then I don't see any risk in being highly detailed either.
Any other conversation from Commissioner Persinger, Commissioner Barra?
No.
Not seeing any. We'll take a look at that from an administrative level, David. All in favor of approval, say aye.
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 They're approved, unanimous. First item, or next item on the agenda, discuss and possibly vote on a resolution to appoint.
Pardon me.
Yes.
Use committee reports.
Oh,
My apologies for interrupting you.
no, my apologies for skipping right down. So, thank you, Commissioner, for making me go back since we went right from public comment. Town Manager, do you have any updates and announcements you want to make?
So are we going to do committees or?
Then we're going to go to committees.
Okay. As far as updates and announcements, yeah, we've replaced 3 streetlights out on Salisbury Street with the new Cobras. That street where we had 8 rounds shot back last spring. That street is well lit now. The lighting is such that it directs down and not out towards the homes, but it is well lit. We have done the application process for the new town clerk. We had 11 people apply. Sheena did a really good job putting this process together. We limited that down to 4 based on the qualifications. We interviewed those 4 earlier this week, and we will make a selection by Wednesday of next week and report back to you in February. We did make the purchase of the new vehicle. Thank you for your support. It's a 2022 Ford Transit. It is getting yellow lights put on the top right now, so when our building inspectors or parking ambassadors are moving around town, they can have those on for safety. The new town hall and police station is still under review. I've met with each of the team leads. They have given me their input. I've made the changes to the areas, the work areas inside. I think it's very important that our employees are satisfied with their workspace, and we're also looking at this town hall for the next 20 years. So we have additional workspace in that we have some storage also. Lifeguard applications are going very well. We've had at least 12 put in so far. And then the parking ambassadors and the police department for their summer employees are still moving forward to get those posted. I can help brief infrastructure when we get to that into audit.
Great, thank you, sir. Next, let's go on to committee reports. Climate change.
Yeah, the Climate Change Committee, excuse my voice, sorry. Climate Change Committee is working on organizing a workshop with the committee and hopefully the commissioners as well. They want to use someone from the Grant Assistance Program at the University of Delaware to facilitate this. To really talk about objectives and goals for where we can go from here. After we've had the background presentation, I guess it was last month. So late next week, you should be hearing more about the potential dates for this meeting. Please take a close look. It would be helpful if all the commissioners could participate. I think it could be an important meeting.
Thank you, Gary. Any updates for audit?
The town manager has an update on the audit committee.
Yeah, speaking with Cohen and Resnick this week, they will no longer be able to conduct the audits on the town. We will be putting that back out to bid sometime in early February. I have talked to the chairman of the audit committee, Julie Johnson. I've made her aware of the situation.
Thank you, Bill. Budget.
All right, Budget and Finance. Next meeting is on the 23rd. Dan Hirschfield's doing a great job pulling a lot of stuff together. Sheena's been awesome as far as providing a lot of detail. And they'll have some good suggestions for us. And hey, budget season is upon us, so you'll be seeing a lot more in the next meeting.
Thank you, Paul. Charter and code.
Nothing on charter and code.
Comprehensive development.
Comprehensive Development Group is trying to organize a meeting. I don't have any potential date yet, but we are at the point where we have to think about our comprehensive plan and whether or not it needs a 5-year update. I'm hopeful to get this group together very soon so that we can get their input on whether or not their view is that there isn't an update needed. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully our goals and objectives are in good shape and we'll continue to work toward them. But I think we should get their input before we move forward with a decision on that.
Great.
That's all.
Streets and infrastructure.
Had a meeting earlier this week. The town manager and Jim Tyler did an excellent job of putting together a really cost-effective set of projects to get done as soon as possible. Partially public funded. Those will be coming to us, assuming, for the next meeting. They're all extremely cost-effective and great ways to make progress, both on streets that need paving, crowning, a lot of sewer work, bay flooding. Just a great job. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Bill.
So the number one priority is the pump station down on Bayard Avenue in Bellevue to make sure that the foundation there is cracking, that is repaired. Then remove the flaps on Reed Street. Then the stormwater drain phase 2, which is from Rodney to Collins Street. They'll do mapping and also put a camera down inside the storm drains to see what needs to be replaced or just relined. Sunset Park, as you know, we've got a grant from DENREC for $22,500. Thank you, DENREC. That'll be work for the ADA ramp, the gazebo, and for landscaping. New Orleans Street, we have a CTF funded project. Thanks to Representative Schwarzkopf's office, we will be raising the crown of New Orleans Street approximately 2 inches to help with drainage.
Did you comment on anything on Bellevue?
So we do have a small sinkhole on Bellevue Street that was brought to my attention. They are looking at it now to see if it can be relined or just to dig the pipe up. The cost, if we have to dig the whole pipe up and tear up the Bellevue Street itself, is around $28,000. If it's to realign it, it may be less. I may ask, depending on how bad that sinkhole, if it gets larger, I may be calling the mayor and ask that we have some type of emergency meeting to get the funding. It was recommended by the infrastructure committee for the funding, but we're not voting on it until February 17th.
Thank you. Investment.
The investment committee was scheduled to meet yesterday, but was postponed until February 3rd.
Marketing Committee.
Marketing Committee has a lot of good stuff going on right now. Just met last week with the team there. Alex Cedric's the chair, and they're tasked with coming up with a new tagline for the town. We may or may not do it, but we're gonna be presenting some stuff to you here in the next meeting. The idea, when we looked at how Dewey presents itself, and how does Lewis and Bethany and Rehoboth, how do they present themselves? Ours hasn't been updated in roughly 35 years, give or take, since we came up with a way of life that, unfortunately, we're not the owner of that tagline. So we're looking at, potential new taglines, and other towns are hiring consultants, and I think we can do this without hiring a consultant. And they're sending an email out to our town email list, and soliciting comments back in the next 2 weeks, and then going to meet for a week. Going to narrow down the responses back to the top three, and the top three I'll bring to the next meeting, and we can talk about it and see where we go from there.
Thank you, Commissioner. And last one, Planning and Zoning. Is there any comment? None. I don't think so. All right. Thank you for that reminder, Commissioner. The next, as we started to talk about, discuss and possibly vote on a resolution to appoint Constance Speak to the vacant police chief position contingent upon obtaining her Delaware COPT certification. Town Manager, have any comments before we open up for public comment?
So we started off with 32 applicants. From there, looked at the qualifications that were voted on by the town commissioners, looked at the officer's experience in that packet of 32. We whittled that down to 8. From the 8, I took those 8 myself and 3 police chiefs, looked at those Delaware. We got that down to 4. And from 4, I broke it down into 3 groups made up of individuals of the town, and each one of those 3 police chiefs, one was Torrey James of Smyrna, who's been the chief there, and he's also been a town manager. One was Keith Banks, who's a police chief over in Rehoboth, and been a police officer for more than 30 years. The other was Pat Ogden, who's been a police officer for more than 30 years. He retired as a captain in the state police. He's the chief of the University of Delaware, and he's been a property owner here in the town of Dewey Beach for 20 years. We took those, we did a round robin with each one of the 4 candidates. Each one of the 4 candidates had questions and answers. Each one of those groups were ranked individually, and then we took the 3 groups into one ranked overall. I took those overall rankings and provided them, those 4 people, and to the commissioners. All 4 candidates said the process up to that point was a very good process, and they appreciated the process. And with that, I turned it over to the commissioners.
Thank you, sir. Explanation on the process. Commissioners, any conversation before I open public comment?
No, I guess, yeah. I think I'd like to hear what anyone says in the public.
Sure. If anyone's here for public comment for this, please feel free to come up, state your name and what your comment is. Right.
Online as well.
Kate, is there anyone online? There's not. Okay.
With that, I'll make a motion so we can have a discussion that we approve the resolution to appoint Constance Speak of Sussex County to the vacant position of police chief contingent upon her attaining her Delaware COPT certification.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any other conversation among the commissioners? Not seeing any. All in favor, say aye.
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 That passes unanimously. Second element on the agenda, presentation from Jim Pappas with the Delaware Department of Transportation regarding the SR1 Resiliency Project.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. So I'm Jim Pappas. I'm the Director of Transportation Resiliency for the Department of Transportation. With me is Joe Hosty, who is with AECOM, who is our consultant that we brought on board to do this study. So I'm not sure who to, I apologize, I'm not sure who to look at here. So if you go to the next one, please. So you may have known, last September, we did a public meeting about the resiliency study that we're going to do along the SR1 corridor, and we're going to be doing another one February, March timeframe.
Director comments to the council.
Okay, thank you, sir. So what you see here is kind of the schedule that we have planned for this. So we received a grant from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, through DEMA, the Delaware Emergency Management. So they were the ones that are funding this. I want to be clear, this is just a planning study right now. We're not going to start building it tomorrow or anything like that. We have to do the planning, then the design, and then the construction. But we wanted to get everybody on board to know what was going on. Next, please. So the purpose of it, obviously, is the sea level rise and the challenges that we see from an infrastructure standpoint. We wanted to share possible mitigation alternatives that we have for this situation here. We are asking for public comment, and we're meeting with you. We've already met with Fenwick, and we're going to be meeting with Bethany in 2 weeks, because you are the communities that are very critical along there, along with all the residents. But we wanted to kind of have one-on-ones with the communities as well to answer any specific questions that you may have. And we're going to show you some possible options that we have. And again, these are just what we showed to the public as well. So it's nothing different than what we showed back in September. And so again, meeting with the stakeholders is very important. So the area is 60 miles. So we're basically from here in Dewey all the way to Fenwick Island. So it's approximately 16 miles. The northern limits are here in Dewey Beach at New Orleans Street, and the southern limit is, again, right down to Route 54. So we kind of broke this up into segments because, just kind of knowing the lay of the land, not everything is exactly the same along that corridor. There are some areas where it's kind of more open than other areas, some where there's residential. So we broke it down into these 6 segments, and that just makes it easier for us to analyze this, because in all honesty, this is going to be like gazillions of dollars, right? And we're not going to get gazillions of dollars right off the bat. So we're going to have to prioritize. So that's part of the input from the public and the modeling that AECOM is going to be ultimately, that is in the process of doing. So you'll see there, segment 1 is kind of where we are now. Segment 2 is kind of the open area north and south of the Indian River Inlet Bridge, all the way down. Segment 6 is Fenwick Island. So we're kind of, AECOM is going to be evaluating each one of those segments individually. So don't want to get into real great detail here because I don't want to bore you to death, but there's modeling that's taking place where you basically take the existing topography, throw different scenarios, different storm events, sea level rise in there. And this is kind of be the base of how we make our decisions going forward from an engineering standpoint. So all this shows you, and again, AECOM is the firm that's doing all this, is just taking a lot of data, putting it into this model, and this model will throw different options or different scenarios to say, this is the kind of event that you need to design for to make this resilient over the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years kind of thing. So this is just kind of some examples. And again, we have not committed to any of these. But we just want to kind of show some examples of what could be mitigation options. So there on the upper left are, just concrete walls, basically. All the way up to down on the bottom right might be look familiar. That's Route 54, if you're familiar with that area. It used to be what we call an at-grade roadway that flooded a lot. So we built that elevated causeway along there, and everybody's high and dry, the evacuation route, and people can move about. So that's the kind of thing that might potentially be an option that we look at there. The other side of that is kind of, so the first picture was kind of like concrete and steel kind of stuff. So that's what we call gray infrastructure. The other part is potentially green infrastructure. So it's like shoreline work, living shorelines, things that we can literally do kind of along the dunes here to kind of mitigate the amount of energy that ultimately would end up on our road and potentially, cause damage along there. So again, just a couple of examples from around the country of options that we could potentially be looking at. So this is just kind of the criteria that we're going to be looking at. So again, this is a planning study right now. We're getting input both from AECOM, from the engineering and the modeling standpoint, input from the public. And this is kind of the criteria that we're ultimately going to be using to make determinations to move forward, to move this again from a planning study to a design, and then ultimately into a construction. I think that was, just Joe, you want to take these couple ones?
So these are potential mitigation, as Jim mentioned, these are planning study levels. So we're putting these out there to begin get some feedback on it. So we're looking right now at the segment 1, which is the Dewey area. So we're looking at the 3 scenarios. One we'll be looking at is raising SR1 itself, and this is for the Bayside scenario. So we did look at Bayside and Oceanside differently. So the first slide I'm going to be talking about is the Bayside. So we looked at the Bayside of different ways to mitigate. One is raising SR1. And on that bar chart, you can see on the top, that black line is the existing grade of Route 1, the crown of the road in the town of Dewey. So that's the black line. The green line is our short-term design storm, so a smaller design storm event. As you can see, a portion of the Route 1 would be overtopped as a result of the Bayside on those storm events. And then for the larger long-term design, and that's with the sea level rise incorporated storm event, that's that red line where you see the majority of Route 1 would be overtopped as a result of the Bayside flooding. So what we looked at was the different options, which I mentioned, the first one being raised Route 1. We're looking in the town areas, preliminary about 1.5 foot in those areas. We know, we're raising Route 1 in the town is much more significant than raising south of here. So we're treating the raising of SR1 not the same throughout the whole corridor. The other one we're looking at is constructing exposed flood wall along the roadway with deployables. So those are just devices that would come up and deploy. For the flood walls, we could look at anything from, full height wall to, a knee height wall, depending what we would need. And you could put that potentially along the sidewalk. And the other option that we're looking at is actual rerouting of Route 1 out into the Bayside area and raising Route 1. Next slide. So the next one is for the Oceanside flooding in the town of Dewey. So on that top area, that light gray, that's the existing grade for the dune itself. So no longer Route 1, so that's the dune itself. And then the short term's that red one, which you can see the dune would be overtopping in those scenarios. And then the long-term one, which is a little bit higher, which you can also see the dunes would be overtopping in both of those scenarios. So what we're looking at here is the first 2 would be on alignment, and that would be the raising of Route 1 as we talked about previously, and then also looking at flood walls that we kind of talked about in the last scenario. And then the other option, which is the mitigation alternative 3, is that's going to be structured dunes. So you actually build walls where you remove the dunes, put the walls there, and you put the sand back on. That way, when the storm event does hit, you have something underneath the sand to weather the storm event. So that's for the segment 1, which is Dewey. And then if you could go to the next slide. Also just want to bring up segment 2, since that's really close to the Dewey, it kind of ties in with the alternate of the Route 1. So in this area, that black line is existing grade of Route 1. And then the green is the short term, which you can see it's overtopping. And then the long term, it's overtopping even more significant levels. So our mitigation alternatives here is raising Route 1, also constructing exposed buried flood walls along Route 1, which is easier to do in this area since you don't have as many driveways and wouldn't require as many deployables to help where the driveways are. And then also that mitigation of off alignment Route 1 into the Bay Area is also shown tying in here. So just kind of go around the Dewey, but still keep the Route 1 itself, but have a bypass way in case of a flood events.
Just for clarification, what is the yellow line?
That yellow line.
Is it a bridge?
It's a bridge out in the water.
It will be a viaduct out in the water.
Interesting. So if you're on beachside, you're okay.
It's a plan.
If you're on bayside, you're not so good.
It's a planning study.
I gotta text my wife. Just hold on. Okay.
Yeah, we are not building.
All
It's
right.
just, it's one of the options we wanted to make sure
Okay.
we did look at for the state of Delaware and for Route 1 to make sure we can keep it open.
Wonderful.
And then the next slide, that's going to be for the ocean side in that area. And that the green line is the existing grade. The short term is that red line, and the long term is the flood elevations and long-term event. Once again, we've been looking to raise Route 1, and now in this area, we could raise more significant than in the town area. Build the exposed flood walls along Route 1 with deployables, and then also we could look at constructing the structural dunes along the beach on Route 1. So that's where that green line is. That would be the dunes, and that would be structurally reinforcing the dunes. We also did a study of sediment transport, so we looked at the dunes and how they would withstand the storm events too. So that's all the slides we have.
Thank you for the presentation. Hopefully, what we need won't happen for a long, long time, at least from those of us that live on the bay side of Highway 1. I'll open up commissioners if you guys have any questions.
I guess I just want to know what your time frame realistically is in terms of any of the recommendations, like raising the crown of the roadway, if that were selected or whatever.
So there are some short-term things that we can do. So this is, like I said, is a long-term planning study. So if we're going to elevate it, for example, that getting money set up, getting permits and things like that, realistically, that's probably a decade out. Short-term, our maintenance forces down here have done, in our opinion, a pretty good job of keeping Route 1 open. Because, I mean, the whole reason we're doing this is Route 1, we know, is a critical corridor. If it goes down, the bypass, from a life safety standpoint, that's not acceptable. So short term, we can put a lot of 2-inch asphalt overlays out there to kind of buy us some time, if you will, until we do something major like this. But we know we can't do that forever. So that's why we went after this planning grant, brought AECOM on board to say, hey, we need to look at the long-term resiliency of Route 1.
Yeah, I think as Commissioner Bauer once said to me, Dewey's with the sea level rise, we'll be Venice before we're Atlantis, but hopefully that's a long way off.
Yeah. And from DelDOT's standpoint, we have identified about 250 miles across the state that what we consider quote unquote frequently flooded roadways that not only during storm events flood, but it's the sunny day flooding just because of tide cycles. And Bowers Beach, for example, that's one of those, it's a one way in, one way out. We actually just got done about a month ago raising that road 5 inches with an experimental thing just to be able, because they have 2 feet of water at times and they're completely cut off. So we don't want any of the other parts of the state of Delaware. So that's literally why our division was created, to address this across the state.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate everything you guys do.
Okay. And then if I could, EVs, you want us to real briefly talk about
the money that Delaware received for the infrastructure for EVs.
Yes, so electric vehicles, so that big buzzword right now. So DelDOT received, and the state of Delaware received $17.6 million for 5 years to deploy EVs across the state. So we are working, ironically, with AECOM and the Division of Natural Resources, our great friends from DNREC, on coming up with a plan. So where we are right now, we're waiting for final rulemaking from the federal government. We've been told any day now. We've been hearing that for about 6 months, but they really said any day now recently. So once we get that, we're going to put out an RFP, a request for proposals. And that's when towns, property owners would be able to say, okay, I want to go after that money because I want to put one here at my establishment or on whatever street you may want to do. There are 4 specific what are called alternative fuel corridors: I-95, Route 1, Route 13, Route 113. Those are our primary locations that we want to deploy chargers. We also have it, so that's with the federal funds that we're going to be receiving. We're also anticipating receiving state of Delaware funds that can go beyond the alternative fuel corridor locations. So there's kind of a couple different places that, you guys, for example, might be able to get some funding to be able to put the charging stations in. So as we move forward, we'll be in contact with you, but just, big picture, those are the things that we are currently working on. And happy to answer any questions that you may have about that as well.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
great, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you very much for the
Thank you.
information.
Knew that was important too.
Yes, thank you.
Number 3, discuss and possibly vote on an ordinance to rezone tax map parcel 334-20.18-74.00 located at 100 Buena Road, Dewey Beach, from Resort Business 2, RB2 to Resort Residential RR, and to amend the comprehensive map accordingly as referred by Planning and Zoning Commission. If I remember correctly, this was sent to Planning and Zoning, and it did come back with their approval, I believe. Is that correct?
Recommended. approval.
Recommended.
Recommended.
Right.
Apologies. With that, I'll ask if anybody would like to speak.
Good afternoon. My name is Hal Dukes from the law firm of Tunnel and Razor, and I've been engaged by Howard Richardson, who is the owner of 111 Buena Street. He has decided that he'd like to redo his house, and we've discovered the zoning requires commercial underneath on the first floor, and the second floor is the residential. And he's engaged a company to initiate drawings and everything, and the engineer from that company, representative from that company, is here with the drawings today.
Eric Campman from Hermstone Custom Homes.
Great.
And Eric's employer contacted me and said, can we straighten this out? I have to tell you, I have had a wonderful experience with this town on this matter. Your building inspector's been great. Everybody's been very helpful on this. And I think even the neighborhood is helpful. So this has been terrific. I've done this for 50 years. This is one of my better experiences. So the drawings and everything are available for your review here. Eric has informed me that he will not be able to start this project until September, October next year. So the pressure's kind of off. I understand there's other activities that have to occur before this can be an official designated single-family residential lot. But in any case, the reason why it's important is the neighborhood isn't commercial on that street. It's all residential people. And the neighbors have been engaged with this matter too, because they themselves want to see residences there rather than a commercial site. So the good news is everybody seems to be on board, and it's just a matter of the paperwork getting it through the system here. So that's basically our presentation. I do have copies of the Richardson Custom Home. I'd be glad to share those with you. And that's it.
Any questions of council? Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Obviously, we've discussed this before. We know the property very well. I probably know it better than anyone else because I can see it from my house. With that, can I have a motion?
Do you want to ask for, I don't know if there's any public here that wishes.
Oh,
this
I
is a public
apologize.
hearing.
Any public comment on this?
And might we want to hear from Dawn or Jim or whomever?
Mayor, I would ask that we hear from, starting with Jim Dedes.
Okay.
Thank you. I would recommend that we add a clause to the ordinance contingent upon the Office of State Planning Plus review. I talked to Dorothy Morris, our liaison with the Plus Committee, and I will submit the application and the justification for the rezoning request. I have to do it before February 2nd, and the next scheduled meeting of the Plus review will be February 22nd. So that's the only contingency. I have no reason to believe that this will not go through, but we need to do that.
Mr. Dedes, I see that your office or your home is under construction. Did you get permits for that?
I knew you would say that. I knew you were going to say that. The answer is yes, but not from Dewey Beach, unfortunately.
Oh, he lives in a different.
But I am in a construction zone right now.
So with, assuming that we're going to then amend this approval that,
Yeah, so, anyone else? Okay, I'll offer, Paul, did you want to say something?
No, I was going to motion if you didn't motion, David. Go ahead. You motion it and I'll second it.
So I motion that we approve this ordinance to amend the comprehensive plan regarding 100 Buena Street, contingent upon the Office of State Planning's review and approval.
Commissioner Bauer, second.
Second.
Any other conversation?
If I could just,
Of course.
I could just add that this is a circumstance that has confronted the town on a number of different occasions where homes that had been developed for years, probably prior to the creation of the town, were subsequently, they were developed residentially, they were subsequently zoned mixed use or some kind of commercial zoning, and it was only, as was the case here, when someone tried to pull a building permit to renovate their home that they found that they had to have commercial on the first floor. And we have rezoned a number of properties, bringing this same kind of case to our attention. It does require action on the part of the state planning office. And your jurisdiction to zone properties in the first place or rezone them is very broad. You just need to find that the zoning classification you assign is suitable and reflects the character of the area, and is encouraging the most appropriate use of that parcel.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
David, do you have a question? Do you have your question face on?
No, it's not my question face.
Yeah, as stated, this is part of a residential community now. I think at one point in time, it's adjacent to the Opal, which was a hotel at that point, way back when. So with that, can I ask for a vote? All in favor, say aye.
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 So you go on to the next steps of approval, but from the town, we're good with you guys moving forward. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your time, folks.
Thank you, Val.
Number 4, discuss and possibly vote on an ordinance to amend section 167-220A of the Dewey Beach Town Code to increase the hotel lodging tax from 2 to 2.5% and possibly recommend reallocation of the tax to the general fund. Just as a matter of clarification, when the hotel tax or the hotel lodging tax was put in place, it was up to 3%. Conversations of council at the time was to start at 1.5%. This happened to be implemented during COVID. It was agreed upon that we would not increase more than 0.5% a year. And so this is increasing it pursuant or in accordance with that from 2 to 2.5%. And I believe that is effective July 1st, or is that April 1st? I don't remember.
Beginning of fiscal year.
April 1st. Any public comment on the hotel tax? Okay.
Can't hear that. What was the comment?
David Lyons is trying to get in. He's on Zoom, trying to make a comment, but we're not sure if it's for this particular line item.
I doubt it.
I think it's the trees, because you didn't call in the ordinance on the rezoning. That's the only one that's planning and zoning.
Okay, can you confirm? Okay. I don't know why David would be calling for a comment, but
Technical difficulties today, so this may be in the first that he can get.
No, I'm not.
oh, there you are.
Not this item.
Not this item, I think he said.
Okay. That was quick. Thanks, David.
So if I could just give a little more
Yep.
background, the state code authorizes municipalities to impose a lodging tax. The state code imposes a lodging tax at a rate of 8% of the rent on every occupancy of a room in a hotel, motel, or tourist home in the state. And our charter, which is also a function of state law, dictates that we can impose a lodging tax of up to 3% on top of the 8% that is charged by the state. And the only remaining contingency is in our charter that would apply, since we've already adopted a lodging tax, is that the rate may not be increased by more than 0.5% annually. I think you said it.
Mm-hmm. But you said it better.
I read it.
No.
Don't get any credit.
Any conversations among the commissioners?
Well, I want to hear, just because Gary's really good at these set-asides. Commissioner Pershinger's thoughts on the reallocation to the general fund. Before we had kind of had a split of the monies, and I just kind of want to hear what he's thinking about that.
Since I've been invited to talk, I will try to do so. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine, Gary.
All right. I support increasing the tax to 2%. I don't support reallocating it to the general fund. I might support some sort of partial reallocation to the general fund, but as we got into this, I think there was some feeling that we really needed to allocate this tax to spending on something that was really productive, something that we really needed. We didn't have a capital improvement fund at that time. So we were able to create one with this tax. We were also able to create, and this is largely because we had a good year in a sense because of COVID and additional transfer tax, we were able to create a capital improvement fund for the new town hall. What to me makes a lot more sense is to continue to reserve 50% of that hotel tax, do a bit of reallocation, allocate some toward a capital improvement, all other capital improvements, allocate a larger percentage to the building of the town hall. By my calculations, I think we're probably looking at a total cost here of about $6 or $6.1 million or so for the cost of a new town hall. We've got a $3 million grant that we got from the state. We have about 2.1 or 2.3 million, $2.1 million perhaps in the capital improvement for building the town hall. That leaves us with a gap of about $1 million. We could begin to close that gap with that, at least part of that 50% allocation of the hotel tax. And more importantly, whatever debt we would have to assume when we're building the town hall, we would have a stream of money to begin to service that debt. That to me makes the most sense rather than just simply reallocating this to the town hall, or reallocating rather to the general fund. Sorry.
So, I'll comment on this. This was, obviously the initial intent here was in pursuant to our abilities within prior law was to increase the hotel tax from 2 to 2.5. I think it's a fair statement that with the budget coming, we'll have a budget review also this evening. We've received the budget, at least an overview. After we go through and assuming we approve the budget, we hold out there the opportunity to look at where we have self-committed or committed funds and whether or not those fund balances are appropriate.
I think we can do it at the time we do the budget.
At the time we do budget, I agree.
Yeah.
So with that, can I have a motion without the recommendation for reallocation and purely for the increase of the hotel lodging tax?
I move that we increase the monthly lodging tax rate from 2% to 2.5% as noted in the ordinance.
And second?
Second.
Any other discussion? I don't have you, Gary, tapping me on the shoulder going, wait. So
No, we're good.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Commissioner Bauer?
Aye.
Okay. That motion passes, or that ordinance passes. Discuss a possible vote on a resolution to approve the town of Dewey Beach to participate in the Sussex County Hazard Mitigation Plan. I'll ask either town manager or Ms. Hinks to come up.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'll start off and then ask Ms. Hinks to come up and go ahead and add something. So one of the goals when I first came in as town manager 2 years ago was to have Dewey Beach participate in the Sussex County Hazard Mitigation Program. It enables us to get flood funding through DEMA and also, what's even more important, through FEMA. We were not part of this program. So I sat down with Dawn and Jim Deedy and said, what do we need to do? And Dawn said, there is a lot of work to this. You have to attend so many online Zoom classes. There's paperwork that has to be done. There's certain code we have to follow to make this happen. But Dawn has made this happen. If it wasn't for her, this would not be happening. So it's very important. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dawn.
Just as a clarification, this was not us not participating. I believe it was an administrative oversight that we did not participate in the last run. And so we're correcting kind of where we should have been. So Ms. Hinks, please.
Yeah, on the last update, which was done approximately 2015, 16, and so forth, the town evidently did not follow through in all the final requirements in order to become part of that update at that point in time. So we've worked to be able to qualify to do that now. So with that thought then, yes, we have an adoption resolution that I believe you folks have a copy of. And that's what was provided, that once and if you folks adopt that tonight, then that resolution would then go to the Emergency Management Director, Joe Thomas of Sussex County. And then from there, they attach that resolution. We then become part of the hazard program. This is what would be attached. All of that then goes to the state of Delaware, DEMA, and then ultimately on to FEMA. And then they say, oh, they've done a fantastic job. They're in like Flynn. And with that, then we would become part of this update that takes place as of December 2022.
So I have one question, Ms. Hinks. Does us being a member of this plan potentially obligate us to spend money in certain ways?
To my knowledge, it's not. Okay. What it does do is give us become an awareness of how we can improve various aspects of flooding, what we can do, and provide that information to the Sussex County so that they can help us to improve. Okay. What it does help us in is it helps us to become part of the CRS, Community Rating System. That's it. And with that, that system is a voluntary program that, by us being part of this hazard mitigation program, we get points in addition to other factors that we do. And then the more points you get, then of course, the insurance agencies for flooding then would say, okay, though you've got this number of points, you're going to get a reduction,
more improved rating,
potential reduction in your insurance flood rates. Don't know the exact amount, but that's the thoughts behind it.
Thank you.
I have a question. In the resolution, it says that the commissioners are hereby directed to implement the recommended actions assigned to them. And I just wanted to know what was being assigned to me.
This is a boilerplate.
Just checking.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mayor. This was a
That's all right.
boilerplate given to us by the county. And they were very adamant about us following the verbiage in this because we have to turn it back into them. From there it goes to the county, and then DEMA, and then FEMA. So I'm not sure I can answer that, but if it's necessary.
Because if I'm supposed to give a quarterly report to somebody, I want to know what I'm reporting on so I can do it. I don't want to mess it up for the town.
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Certainly, I can look into that and then be able to get back to you with that answer.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Also, the plan itself has been put on our town website.
Since you offer any public comment concerning this? Not seeing any.
No, we have a waving hand online.
Mr. Dedes.
I just want to point out, we are the only jurisdiction in Sussex County that does not participate in this because every other jurisdiction does. So we're in good company.
Thank you.
Better late than never.
What was that, Mr. Barrow?
I said better late than never.
Well, this is a positive thing. Again, this was Ms. Hicks' great work on getting this caught up and for this to have an opportunity. Commissioners, can I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
And a second.
I will second that we accept this resolution.
Any other discussion? Not seeing any hands. All in favor, say aye.
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 That also passes unanimously. Number 6, discuss possible amendments to Chapter 173 of the Dewey Beach Town Code regarding trees. Commissioner Persinger, can I tax you into leading us
Yes. In September of 21, we actually voted unanimously to send this to P&Z for their consideration. However, it's not really a P&Z issue. It's section 173 of the code, of the town code. It doesn't involve zoning at all. After that, the Charter and Code Committee did take it up briefly, didn't make much progress on it. And a couple of members of the Planning and Zoning Commission brought it back to me and asked if I would try to get this before the commissioner. So since it was already one of our issues, I said that I would help to do that. I had a long conversation with Jim Dedes and Dawn Hicks, our building official, and went through some of the problems. And that's what I've tried to outline on the first page of the exhibit that you have today, requirements for tree removal. Even the first paragraph of this section is a bit problematic because, while it says trees less than 20 inches in circumference measured 1 foot above the ground can be removed without a permit, it's the second part of the sentence that is the problem, and really allows you to take down any tree of any size unless it's one of the native species that is listed in the code, and that's a very short list. It's much shorter than the list you see in Rehoboth, for example. So it was just a confusing section. So what we're trying to do here, and I don't want to belabor this too much. Let me just go to the amendments. We want to try to make this clear. We want to give the people in town, the town staff, an opportunity to better enforce this, and hopefully, create a better understanding. So the suggestion here is that for trees that are less than 20 inches in circumference, and that's measured 1 foot above the ground, you can't really visualize 20 inches in circumference very well. So that's why I converted it on the first page to diameter. So that's a tree that's almost 6.5 inches in diameter. You can take that down without a permit, no matter what tree it is. That's one of the proposed amendments. For trees that are larger than that, but are less than 40 inches in circumference, and if you convert that, that's about 12.8 inches in diameter. You would need a permit for anything larger than 20 inches. What we want to do here, we're not changing the criteria here, but the second criteria by which you can take down a tree is if it presents immediate harm. If that's the reason why we remove a tree, we would require an owner to provide a statement from a licensed arborist that was the case. I know I had in my own front yard here in Maryland, a tree company came by and said, well, you got to split down the trunk of that tree. That's going to come down. In hindsight, I probably should have had a more authoritative person to come in and take a look at that tree, give me an authoritative opinion about whether or not that really did represent some degree of harm to me or my property. So that said, if you're in that situation of immediate harm, the town could still reserve the right to engage in consulting arborists before making a final decision on issuing a permit. They already, in some of the situations, and try to enforce the existing code, they do consult with the Rehoboth arborist from time to time. So anyway, that gives the town a way to work a little more effectively. For trees that are at least 40 inches in circumference or bigger, again, that's a diameter of not quite 13 inches. One of the things that the code did not specify was the acceptable reasons why you would be able to move a tree. So the reasons that were suggested here would be reasons that are very similar to what's in the code currently for trees that are between 20 and 40 inches. So if it's in the footprint of new construction, the town can give you permission to do that. If it's immediate harm, you would follow the same procedure that you would for a tree that's only between 20 and 40 inches. That is, you get a licensed arborist if you're the property owner. The town still has the right to reserve its opportunity to engage in consulting offers. The trees in the right of way, this sometimes becomes an issue depending on where a driveway is going to be located. Trees in the town right of way of any size, no matter whether they're less than 20 inches or greater than 40 inches or anything in between, they would not be removable without a permit. Next, we suggest that we simply delete the section on tree stands. I didn't talk about that, but simply treat all trees the same. Rehoboth, I believe, is in fact planning on doing something similar. They apparently don't see the need for distinguishing between individual trees and tree stands. The town tells me that often that, you know, people hear the sound of a chainsaw and they're wondering what's going on in terms of tree pruning or exactly whether a tree has been taken down. So if you wanted to prune your trees, we would require this would require a no-cost permit for tree pruning. That would alert the town. They've become alerted anyway by phone calls from people when they hear the chainsaws, and would provide the town an opportunity to go in and review it to make sure that they're actually pruning the tree as opposed to topping the tree. And both pruning and topping are defined in the town code. There was a suggestion, this was actually part of the vote that we took back in September of 21 to increase the fine for violations of this section. What our vote included was increase the fine to $1,000. There was some talk about possibly increasing, not among the commissioners, but possibly making it even higher than that. And then require that trees prune. This is the replacement idea. Any tree that is removed with a permit would be replaced. This would be a new requirement. Would basically be, you know, you take a tree down, you have to replant the tree, and it would have to meet some minimum size requirements. 20 inches would be the minimum circumference, minimum height of 12 feet, and the option, you could require comparable size of tree removed. That might be a little difficult, particularly if it's a very large tree, you know, something of 40 inches or greater. And then finally, change the town code enforcement official language that's in the current language, just a bit building official throughout. That's simply a simple change to the language. So that is what we're trying to do. Again, we're not really trying to dramatically change the requirements. Still trying to give property owners ample opportunity to take down trees, particularly if it's in the footprint of new construction. But still tighten it up just a bit so the town has a better opportunity to enforce. So let me stop there. I don't know if Dawn has any comments. I think Dave Lyons may have some comments as well. Dave has been very helpful. He actually talked to or exchanged emails with Rehoboth Arborist.
I'll ask for David to make a comment. The intent, and this is actually former Mayor and Commissioner Dale Cook had expressed this as an element that was close and dear to his heart before he retired. He spoke to us about it. You know, this is, well, I never thought I'd be talking about a tree ordinance. The thought here is how do we preserve the green nature of our community as well as the ecological balance that we have here in Dewey Beach. And once again, Commissioner Persinger provides valuable clarity to try to take the ambiguity out of the ordinance that we have. That being said, I'll open up. Mr. Lyons, do you have any comments?
Can you hear me? Can I come through?
Yes, David, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. And so I apologize earlier for my technical difficulties, but thank you. So everyone knows I am David Lyons. I do live at 105 Chesapeake Street. I've been here for over 20 years, and in fair disclosure, I do sit on planning and zoning, and I have been part of the code review committee. And that's where I actually came across this piece of code. And I will tell you, I've also, I thank Commissioner Persinger for his support in reviewing the code and bringing it to all of you commissioners. And, you know, briefly, You only have to live up here in the north end to watch the development and the speed of the development that's going on here with all the new homes and how quickly the trees are being taken down. And our own comprehensive planning calls for preserving the historic nature and the trees and the landscaping here, as well as the coastal. And we have our own climate control group to make sure that we take care of the city and what we all love about it. So I hope you as commissioners will consider it. There are some things here to clean up the code, obviously make it more enforceable. And I think any changes we make, we want to always enable our code enforcement folks the strength to be able to enforce it, because that's part of the challenge. There are some other things that some of the other towns have come up with, Lewis and Rehoboth, in terms of replenishment. I know that's a tough issue sometimes to swallow, but we only have to look at our own climate change issues to know that trees are important to reducing our carbon footprint. So I know everyone's always afraid of telling homeowners they can't or they must. But I think, we have an obligation to everyone else in the town, as well as future owners of the town, to be able to preserve what we all love about it. So, and there's a lot of good input from some of the other communities in Lewis and Rehoboth in terms of what they've considered and what they've done. So I appreciate your support and hope that the commissioners will consider these changes to the code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyons. Kate, is there anyone else other than Ms. Lyons? Okay. Commissioner.
I had a question if we needed to provide further guidance about where the trees needed to, if a tree needs to be replaced, where it could be placed, so we don't have to go into this, okay, I cut this one down, I replaced it, and I'm gonna cut that one down, and I'm gonna replace it kind of thing. Do we need to specify? And I'm asking Commissioner Persinger or Mr. Lyons for input.
I don't know the answer to that. Obviously, it has to be on the owner's property, but beyond that, as long as it's if they're going to take it down, let's say it's in the footprint of new construction. What the code also talks about is the area needed to facilitate construction. So, if a tree is in either of those areas, meets either of those qualifications, you can get permission from the town to take the tree down. So if you're going to replant the tree, obviously you would have to plant it somewhere that would not affect the new structure that's going up. So you wouldn't want to plant it too close to the house. I mean, if a property owner were to plant it, closer to the house than someone else might recommend, then, that's really on them. I don't, again, I don't know that there's a real good answer to that question.
If I may, there's one, in talking to Liz Lingo from Rehoboth, her suggestion was kind of take a look at this a little differently. Rather than developing removal criteria, develop replanting requirements. And that's what Rehoboth does. If you take down such a specific tree, you either have to replace it either on your property or some other place in the town. Now that obviously becomes a challenge from an enforcement perspective, but they have put together some regulations and some thinking, and there's a new draft that they're working on in terms of the rules for replacement per se. I don't have them handy, but we could certainly bring them to the commissioners.
Well, I have a question. I think one of the main issues we've had is sometimes when people take down a tree without a permit, the fine gets issued and they pay the fine. Right now, I think it's $500 if it meets the over 20-inch circumference or 25-inch circumference. But what happens is they're supposed to replace the tree and they just don't do it. And from my perspective, I just don't know what our recourse is and whether we should be putting recourse into the code that basically makes them follow through with the replacement. And, I don't know what the right way to do it is, but one thing I think that we could do is we'd increase the fine, instead of it being a fine, that it's a very large deposit with the town that is basically refunded to them after they've replaced the tree. And it's, you're talking thousands of dollars because that's what these large trees cost. So that might be a way that if people are basically removing trees, they know that basically the fine is this deposit with town, and then they get money back after they've done the replacement.
Interesting.
Yeah, if I may, there and Fred can comment as to whether or not this is a doable thing, but I believe in Rehoboth, they put a lien. If there's a lien put on the property that it can't be transferred, until the tree is actually replanted or that the city is satisfied that the tree has been replaced, whether through on that existing lot or on a new lot. So I don't know whether or not that's a feasible thing to consider, but that would at least give the code more teeth. And that is definitely a problem. The current way it's written for $500, I can just ignore the town. And if I'm paying $1 million or $2 million for a piece of property, $500 is nothing.
Fred, do you have any thoughts on recourse on ensuring that replacement trees are planted in terms of what, from an ordinance perspective, we might do that would be effective?
That's an interesting idea. I had not considered that. What Mr. Lyons is saying is correct, that if you've got a zoning violation or some kind of a property management violation, such as this, that if your property is for sale, the buyer's attorney and their office is going to contact the local municipality and ask, are there any outstanding violations related to this property? And when they're told that they are, then that is a excellent opportunity to remedy the situation. So it's not a prohibition necessarily against the property being sold, because if you don't do your homework as a buyer, you could buy the property subject to the requirement of bringing it into compliance. But it's an excellent opportunity to insist on compliance when a seller is very motivated.
He used the word lien. Is it actually a recorded lien, or is it more just an?
I wouldn't think it would be. I don't want to quibble with what Mr. Lyons said or the words he chose. He may know. I've not investigated this, but if you've got an open building permit, for instance, it's not been closed, you've got construction on the property that was not shown to be permitted, those aren't liens necessarily, but they are very significant problems that get addressed around the transfers of properties all the time.
Is it an issue of certificate of occupancy cannot be issued until those?
Well, the certificate of occupancy presumably has already been issued, so it'd be a question of whether you want to revoke it, which would be a pretty extreme measure, because you'd be telling someone they couldn't occupy their property until they remedied the violation.
I mean, my main thing with whatever we do here, if we do something, is clarify the code, which Commissioner Pershing has done a great job of kind of outlining what's in there. But just as important, I think for the people who really want to kind of see trees preserved in town, what they want to see is if trees come down that shouldn't have, that they get replaced. And right now, the replacement side of it isn't working as well as any of us would like. So I think somehow whatever we do has got to have more teeth. And maybe we put right in the code that property upon transfer, it's notified or something. You know what I mean? That we explicitly state that it's considered a code violation that has to be remedied that conveys with the property.
So if you have a hazardous circumstance on your property, you can get a notice that you've got to bring it into compliance. And if you don't, the town may have the right to go out and incur the expense associated with removing that hazardous circumstance and buttoning up the house or doing whatever needs to be done for a vagrant, or proper term, property. But it could be that the town reserves the right to plant the tree in a location it deems appropriate, and then can place a lien on the property to recover the expense associated with that. Now, that's a very extreme measure as well, but that's kind of comparable to dealing with circumstances that are hazardous or dangerous. Something to consider.
So I think there's two things here to discuss. One is, there's element of amendment to eliminate any ambiguity. I think that we all can agree that what Commissioner Persinger's put forth is obviously, and as normal, gets that end all goal. The second is, are there any, in addition to elements that we want to put forth, whether it be liens or replacements, et cetera, is that something that we need to do tonight as part of this amendment? Or is it something that we should?
I don't think we have anything to vote on tonight. do we?
No, it's a discussion.
Yeah, there's no-
Oh, right.
I would think that we would, next time we meet, have something that we could vote on, and that should include a consequence for bad behavior.
I agree with Elizabeth on that.
Well, yes, I agree too. My perhaps very optimistic objective here was to get a reasonable consensus around the elements of the changes that we would make, and then come back at the next meeting with a proposed audit ordinance that would include the elements there. So with respect to replacement, and just to be clear, we already have in the code a requirement that a tree was taken down without a permit, that otherwise would need a permit to be taken down, must be replaced. And if you don't replace it, you're in violation of the code, you're subject to a $500 fine. The other element of replacement is, even if you take down a tree with a permit, this change that we're suggesting here is that you would be required to replace that tree somewhere else on your property.
So that's a good point for discussion. So if people get a permit for within their house's footprint that they're building, they could conceivably have like 4 or 5 trees. So the intention is that even ones within the house's footprint would have to be replicated elsewhere on the property.
That's right. That's right. It would be a 1-for-1 replacement.
All right. So then we'll move.
Yeah,
to
I think we're all in agreement on that, Gary.
So in the next
Well-
meeting, we'll add the agenda item to possibly vote on a change.
Can I offer one thing, a suggestion?
Yeah, Jim.
Gary, when we all discuss this, I would like us to consider not issuing a rental license as another alternative with whatever else. That really hits home to a lot of people.
Okay.
Just a consideration.
Does that need to be a public code? I don't know. I mean, it's a code. If you have a code violation, any other code violation, you issue a rental license.
We in the past have said if you don't meet certain criteria, for example, if you rented without a license, in the past, we say if that occurs again, you're not going to get a rental license from the town. I think we have that authority because they've attributed a pattern of non-compliance.
Right.
And they can always appeal it to the commissioners, of course. But I think that's a punishment that's a harsh punishment. And I think that's something most people will respond to and try to comply with because there's a tremendous amount of income attached to that for property owners.
Is there some general language that could be added to this section of the code that would kind of allude to that or make a little clearer what opportunities you have for denying them a rental license or even something else?
Yeah.
The property owner. I'm not sure what that language would be. That's why I'm asking.
There is a concept called an unclean hands doctrine that says you can't request essentially permits or authorizations from the town if you're not in compliance. But the question of whether you're in compliance can sometimes, depending on what the nature of the violation is, can be arguable, and you can't revoke someone's right to a permit without giving them due process.
Right.
So it can involve, can get complicated. Tree removal, though, might be fairly uncomplicated.
All right, so Gary and Commissioner Persky and Mr. Dedes, if you can get together in terms of the resolution that will be put forth at the next meeting. But again, the preservation of the green.
It would be an ordinance.
Yes, from an ordinance perspective, chapter 173.
But just could I just to finish this off, to be clear, so that we actually can write something, we're looking for either increasing the fine substantially or providing some sort of language in here that would provide some additional authority or restriction or penalty, I guess, for the owner who does not abide by the code. Is that right? Or are we trying to find something that's differential for, well, yeah, just leave it at that.
I think there's two things here, Commissioner Persky. One is the clarity that you provided. Second is to put more teeth into the ordinance so that, as Mr. Lyons put out, if you're building $1 million home and you decide to take 3 trees out of the middle, it's $1,500. It's not that big of a deal. Requiring them to whether it's a substantial fine or a amount that could be refunded after the trees are replanted, I think there should be that avenue. As these cottages have grown over the years, it's not always, necessary. Well, we need to have more, we need to keep the trees, we need to keep the area green. So we need to have a resolution.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Number 7, discuss and possibly vote to approve an ordinance to amend section 185-9B of the Dewey Beach Town Code to increase parking meter fees to $3 an hour. Town manager, can you give some substance to this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So both Rehoboth and Bethany Beach have gone to $3 an hour. Dewey Beach does not have a property tax. For a few towns in the state that doesn't have one. As Commissioner Persinger said, we were trying to build a new town hall and we were looking for funding. And on top of that, we have inflation this year that went above 7%. Our employees are very important to the town. Without them, we cannot make things run. We'll be looking to increase their salaries this year. So every little bit of increase that we get on, whether it's from parking or anything else, will really help us as we go into this budget year. So trying to keep up with Bethany and Rehoboth, all metered spots, there's approximately 167, I believe, metered spots throughout the town. That would go from $2.50 an hour. They would go to $3 an hour, and that would be during the off-peak, which is not Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Any public comment? Again, not seeing any. Open up to commissioners for discussion.
Does this simplify our parking fee structure so that people are less confused when they come to town?
They are, but
Not completely, but it's in the right direction.
And we still have Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday nights where there is not a parking charge, so people can come in dinner. Okay, thank you.
Do we have an estimate of how much this change would bring to the town? My guess is it's not going to be a lot of money, because if I think about my own street, there just are a lot of cars. There are plenty of parking spaces, but not a lot of cars on the street at that time.
yeah,
In peak hours.
approximately anywhere between $8,500 and $10,000 more a year.
Total for the year?
Yes.
Okay.
My take on this is, I'm fine with doing this, but I think that as part of our budget process, we have to look at all the parking, seasonal passes, daily passes, the peak rates on weekends and whatnot, and try to potentially do some rationalizing in terms of some of the rates where some of them may not really be at an appropriate price point. But I'm fine doing this type of.
Yeah, I think this, Commissioner, I think this is a step into trying to simplify and make everything consistent. I think one thing element will come is hopefully what comes out of budget and finance is further suggestions on whether it's the fee structures, et cetera, or the annual parking passes that will all be incorporated into this, as well as potentially looking at the 4-block minimums, 4-hour minimums, which is, I've had friends from Fenwick saying, I'm not coming up to see you and grab a drink because it's going to cost me $28 when it's all said and done. So it's just a step in that direction. With that being,
Yeah, I agree. I think we need this. I got asked this question by a number of people, and if we ask the public if they know what our parking requirements are, they wouldn't know. You can ask all your friends, and I think the difference of $2.50 an hour or $3 an hour, let's just simplify this thing. I don't think anybody's not going to come to town for 50 cents. I mean, that's, we're really splitting hairs at that point. So I'm in favor of, let's be consistent. Let's, advertise it appropriately and take it from there.
with that, can I have a motion?
I move that we.
Motion.
Sorry, Elizabeth's already started
Go
talking.
ahead, Elizabeth.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Elizabeth, you go first.
I move that we amend section 185-9B to increase parking rate meter fees to $3 per hour.
I'll second.
And Commissioner, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, that passes unanimously. The next two elements are discussions. Discuss the implementation fee for all event applications. Town manager.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So we have events that are done in town. They fill out the applications. It takes time to review the applications. Then, whether it's a big event, like we're closing down a street, whether it be Dagsworthy Street for the art festival, running of the bull for down on Salisbury Street, we are town resources to an extent and time to review these permits when they come in. Most of the beach communities, Lewis and Rehoboth, have an application processing review fee. Not sure exactly what that fee should be, but for Rehoboth, I believe it's $50. I would just ask that you consider that. I know we're discussing it tonight, and I'm open to answer any questions.
Question, face. Now, can you give an example of ones that were in, you said running the bulls?
Running the bull, Dewey Goes Pink,
the
skimboarding competition, the art festival, those type of events. They do an event in the Rusty Rudder parking lot, which is like a CrossFit type of event. All those type of large events take, and you may not think, but it's still, somebody needs to go and make sure that they're following the rules when they do these events. Somebody needs to review the paperwork. If they ask for a police officer, it has to go over to Lieutenant Hocker's side of the house, where he and Sergeant Dempsey have to say, do we have enough officers to work this? Who can work this? It takes them time to process that also. In the meantime, whoever's doing the event is doing it for basically right now for free. When I say free, to the town, right?
Are you just asking for a $50 event application fee, or?
At this point, we're just looking at that. I mean, you could raise it up, and you could say if you're having a major event like that, it could be more. It could be actually, if you're going to do a major event and shut a street down, you have to pay $200, $300, $400.
So for clarification, right now, events have to be approved in advance, but there is no fee for
There's
having
no
the
fee.
event.
Unless they hire Lieutenant Hocker's folks to work as police officers for the event.
And for further clarification, we have numerous 5Ks through the town of Dewey Beach. And I'm all for the 5Ks in Dewey Beach. They're approved, and unless there's police officers being involved.
Yeah, so we have,
Okay.
over 15 in
I
the
didn't realize
summer.
that. Okay.
Just something to think about, please.
I'm perfectly fine.
When we're looking at budget numbers, we're trying to figure out how we can have
We should just
additional income
include it
coming in.
next month. We should just have a proposal and vote on that.
I assumed all along that there was a fee.
Okay. Commissioner Bauer, Commissioner Persinger, any comments?
No, let's make it simple for everybody.
Sorry, Commissioner Persinger, Commissioner Bauer talked over you.
No, I said, yeah, my comment is just, whatever is going to make life simpler for everybody. I'm for that.
Why don't we bring that forward in the next meeting?
Okay, yes, sir.
All right. Number 9, discuss the implementation of a bidding process for all commercial activity on the beach. Town manager.
Yeah, so in the 2 years that I've been here, I've just seen an increase of folks wanting to do businesses on the beach. I've asked Kate to put together a presentation on this. We did a survey, several months ago to the public asking what their input was. And I'll let Kate talk about that, but basically they like it the way it is. We do have an ordinance that the town solicitor had pointed out to me that basically says no person shall conduct any commercial activity on any street or public right of way. No person shall conduct any commercial activity on the beach during the summer season unless pursuant to a contract with the town. So when we do concessions on the beach, for example, Katz, Lynham, whoever it is, the big concession, we do have a contract. It spells out what the rules are, what the town expects from that vendor. But right now with the individual businesses that we have that operate on the beach, we don't have that. It's out of fault of mine. I didn't actually see this until town attorney pointed it out to me, but we should have been following that rule all the time. That includes whether it's catering on the beach, whether it includes yoga on the beach, whether it includes skimboarding lessons on the beach. There's a lot of things. There's volleyball. There's a lot of things that are happening on the beach and really following our code. And with that, I'll let Kate go through the presentation.
Yeah, so the topic of commercialization of the beach has come up a few times over the years. So town staff has just done some research and brainstorming on the issue. Just wanted to present a potential idea. at the very least, just to keep the discussion going as Dewey grows and changes. So those were the current ordinances that are on the books that Bill just reviewed. So the current concerns, number of businesses seeking to work on the beach has increased each year. Naturally, when one business idea seems to work, you're going to have more entrepreneurs join the fold. So just in my 5 years of being here, especially last year, a good example, we started off with one yoga vendor and now we're up to, I believe, 5. With more businesses working on the beach, that can mean more work for town staff. We want to make sure business is being carried out appropriately and within the guidelines of the beach rules. And in the interest of fairness, we bid out for a concessions provider and have for quite some time. And historically, that vendor pays quite a bit to the town to hold that contract and operates under strict obligations set by the town. Most of these other businesses operating are small out of town. That means they only pay $109 a year. And from there, they can charge whatever they like to the public. So there's a bit of a disparity there. And then I'm sure the desires of your constituents weighs pretty heavily as well. So we wanted to provide some opinions from the public on the issue. We created a poll to gauge public opinion of commercialization on the beach. Poll was posted on town website and circulated via e-newsletter and social media. And this wasn't just a yes/no poll. We did allow participants to provide plenty of detail on there. So we asked them, do you support business on the beach? If yes, what types of business would you like to see? Are there any limitations you'd like to see in place? And do you own property in Dewey? We collected 136 votes. 101 of those claimed to own property in Dewey. And while the results were close, the majority support business on the beach. However, the additional comments from voters provided a little more insight. And I do have a full report on this in an Excel spreadsheet that I can provide for you guys. Just figured since we're just discussing it tonight, if we want to delve into it further, I can get that for you. So the vast majority of voters support the current beach concessions, which are the beach equipment rentals, chairs, umbrellas, and snack foods, but do not wish to see further commercialization of the beach. And these are just a few of the opinions that I pulled from that poll. Just what we have, no more, no less. Only the current vendor that offers beach rentals should be allowed. So there were a few that kind of fit in line with this opinion. And on top of that, many voters said they support family-friendly or health and wellness activities conducted outside of peak times. So they were plenty of support for other types of businesses, but definitely wanted some limitations. Obviously, the yoga, skim and surf lessons, fitness classes, things like that were looked at favorably overall. So this brings us to the regular brainstorming sessions that happen in town hall. And we thought we already have a plan that seems to work with our concessions contract. So would that be a good solution across the board for all beach businesses? Since this would limit the number of beach businesses as the public's requested, it also puts the town back in the driver's seat. We get to choose what activities should be offered that fit with the brand of Dewey. We can decide how many of those vendors we need, maybe to prevent large crowds in one place. Maybe we want a skimboard club at the north end and one at the south end. Maybe we need 3. Either way, the town gets to make that call. Also, the onus is on the business to win the bid. We get to see all the great ideas they have and choose who we'd like to partner with. And of course, just as we do with the concessions contract, we set the terms and the business is under contract to follow through with all the great ideas they presented to us. And right now, Town Hall can't recommend a specific business out of fairness. We can with our concessions people, we send plenty of people that way, which works out for both of us. But other than that, we can tell you who's licensed in the town for that type of work, but we can't vouch for their level of service. We can't provide an accurate referral, so to speak. So this would also remedy that issue. So to close, town staff feels there's absolutely a place for business on the beach, and if it's done right, it could be a great marketing opportunity for the town. Some neighboring towns, they don't allow a variety of businesses on their beaches. but healthy, fun, family-friendly activities right next to the ocean. That's a pretty cool experience for a lot of people. So just leaving you with some talking points to get the conversation rolling. Just a couple examples. Beach bonfire vendors, they can be our best friend. Beach bonfires have become super duper popular. Each year we get more and more of these, but they can be messy. They can be potentially dangerous. Vendors, though, they know how to set up properly, and more importantly, they clean up properly. So the more people we can get using a vendor for this, the better. Makes everyone's job easier. And on top of that, then we get to market a certain partner to the public for this to really encourage people to use the vendor. So we think that would really take off if we had the ability to do that. And it's same with our fitness or yoga businesses. We can't market this service, again, out of fairness, but if when people visited our town website or our Facebook page, they see right there without having to search the web elsewhere, wow, there's yoga class like right by the ocean. How do we get involved? I think that's a great image for the town. And then just lastly, as a reminder, the concessions vendor pays the town to hold exclusivity. This has been a great benefit for the town financially, but it's also a partnership. There's mutual benefit there, and maybe broadening those partnerships is a viable option. So that's it.
Thank you. Again, this is discussion. Before I open up for commissioners for discussion points, and obviously what move forward, I'll ask, is there anybody here from the audience that would like to speak?
Yes.
State your name, your purpose.
Yes. Jim Curlin. I'm with Beach and Bash. My address is at Starboard. Now, obviously, Kate, would you mind bringing up the concerns thing real quick? Would you please? As a small business owner that we do work out of a storage unit, I'd like the council and the mayor to consider some of the things. The businesses do increase every year, I'm sure. And you're not the only beach town, as I've researched this, is going through this issue. But also with that, they need customers to thrive. And so you got to remember that just because a guy pops up and says, I want to do yoga on the beach or picnics on the beach or things like that, that there's still free market. So they have to have customers. And who are they going to go to? The better businesses. So free market would dictate that out there. I get that monitoring beach businesses is a time-consuming task for town staff. But again, I think maybe looking at this of working together on something, maybe have a Dewey Beach certified business. Don't make us pay more money, because I have to remind everybody that we don't make millions of dollars. Last year, my business did just over $150,000. That wasn't here at Dewey. That was between Ocean City, here, Lewis, and Rehoboth Beach, okay? We also have 3 people that work underneath us, young people that we mentor, and that type of thing. So there's things to think about. Dewey Beach, I've been coming here for the better part of 20 years, and I give a crap about this beach. And it's one of those things that you all have to remember. My wife said about on the way over here was like, I hope they don't kill our dream. And not just you, but we're going through this with a lot of beaches. So I just want to remind everybody that, we have to pay for yours, pay for this, pay for that. We don't have, it's not a high profit margin. So when Kate brought up like, oh, they're making, all this money, we're not making a lot of money. And I would be happy to do like a workshop or volunteer my time with everybody to sit down and you can dive into what we do. I have a great working relationship with Bill, but maybe something along the lines that's a smaller thing that you say, okay, you can apply to be a Dewey Beach certified business, a beach business. And what comes without that? Well, maybe we have to one time a month or twice a month clean up the beaches, right? All the beaches have to come together and to do that type of thing. So there's more to it than just saying, general consensus, less is more. And commercialization is also another big thing. We don't put up huge signs or obnoxious anything, specifically for our business, with the beach picnics being set up and bringing food on the beach. I don't feel like we have a conflict of interest with even your beach concession business, okay? Why? Because we do something completely different, and it's only for a few hours. And in fact, we've brought more business in. People call us from New Jersey, let's say, they're like, which town should we go to? Generally, I say, I promote Dewey Beach a lot for your tourism. They see this, they take pictures. They're like, oh my God, this is beautiful. We're in Dewey Beach, Delaware. And then, it helps out your tourism too. So there's a lot of positives to not making this a barrier of entry for a small business to come into, okay? And just want to say that.
Thank you, Mr. Kerwin. I wanted to make a joke about restricting the amount of Jersey people who can come in, but I only can say that because I'm originally from New Jersey, so, but thank you, sir, I appreciate it. Any other comments among the commissioners? Or, I apologize, anyone else?
Yeah, I guess my only thing is the businesses who do stuff on the beach are all so different. You know what I mean? And there's like high value businesses and low value businesses and people who want to do stuff once a week versus every day. And so what I really struggle with is what would you can put things out to bid. And in some cases, you may want to only have one vendor, but in other cases, you may want to let as many people do it as could do it. And there should be no minimum price or no, it shouldn't just be the highest thing. So I feel like there's no one size fits all answer to this. And that's the only thing I'm struggling with is how we make it that we're still a business friendly town, keep people happy with not overwhelming the beach with commercial activity, which is clearly a concern, but yet try to put some structure around, what's happening with all these businesses on the beach. I don't have the answer. It's kind of what I'm
Okay. Commissioner Persinger, Commissioner Barr.
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
I'm not sure that the bidding process makes sense to me. I mean, public beach, you have to make sure that the public has access to the beach. So therefore, you can't have businesses out there that are intruding on people's access to the beach. So that's a criteria. That's something the town probably struggles with already. I think it's fine to define the types of business activities we would like to have on the beach. I mean, but and maybe there's a list of 4 or 5 of those. I'm just not sure that as long as there's room on the beach. I know this is part of a revenue issue for the town. I'm just not sure that it makes sense to get into a bidding process to have preferred vendors or accepted vendors in each of those. I'm not sure the town has any real good criteria for how to decide what's a reliable or a certified vendor in some sense. I think if you define the categories, there has to be a fee there should be some fee for conducting business on the beach, and there should be some return to the town for the cost to the town staff of managing and determining what's acceptable on the beach as opposed to to maintain public's access to the beach. But I'm not sure that you should ask these businesses to get into a bidding war to be able to have the privilege of conducting business on the beach.
Thank you, Commissioner Persinger. Commissioner Barr?
Yeah, I think we need a way to control the amount of commercialization, and that's where I stand on it. And as I'm listening to this, I'm getting ready to go on vacation tomorrow morning down to Punta Cana, and if we've all been to other countries and you sit on a beach, there'll be a hat person come up to you, there'll be a sunglass person come up to you, a jewelry person, and it becomes overwhelming. So you don't want 20 people selling sunglasses to you while you're sitting on a beach, and here comes the inexpensive jewelry person coming in right behind them, and they're fighting over who's going to talk to who. So I think we need to control it. I got to defer to the administration here. How do we best police it? I mean, we want people to have an enjoyable experience while they're here, and we want them to keep coming to the beach. So let's keep it within reason, so people don't get overwhelmed with different products being sold on the beach. That's my 2 cents worth.
And I would also want to add that it would be good if we could make sure that all the vendors were aware of town regulations, because from my home venue, I have seen things set up on the beaches after sunset, so the lifeguards are not there. Let me say, maybe it's sparkling cider that was exploding when the cork came out, but I'm not sure.
Well, I think there's a few elements of this. One is it started with Fred alluding to part of our code that to adhere to or at least review and discuss how that could be either enforced or altered or met from an amendment. So I think we need to figure out from an argument or from a conversation perspective We don't want the code to get in the way of what the residents and the visitors of Dewey Beach want. We've got to make sure that legally we're doing the right way. There are elements of, I think this is the intent here was, and Commissioner Bauer, thank you for that visual, because I remember being on vacation and having 40 or 50 people try to sell me things, including what you said, and some things and some other things. And that, how do we make sure that doesn't happen on our beach? We've had situations in the last few years where somebody wanted to bring animals on the beach, and we had to discuss that. I'm sorry, I can't help but laugh. We just need to make sure we're doing it the right way, and so we'll continue to have this discussion. The key is that we're not infringing upon anyone's rights to use our beach, especially those that are visiting from in-state or out of state, and that we're protecting their well-being. And so we'll continue to have this discussion on this.
Well, I'm being encouraged to point to the obvious, which is we do have a basis right now in the code which forbids commercial activity on the beach. And we're not, the council's not being asked, do you want to instruct the town manager to strictly enforce this? I think the question before you is, do you want to loosen up the code in thoughtful ways that might allow for certain types of businesses to take place, and under what circumstances? Or do you want to strictly adhere to the code as it currently reads, which forbids commercial activity on the beach during the summer season unless pursuant to a contract with the town? That's in the code right now.
So, so based on that, yoga and skimboarding, for example,
Everything,
would not be allowed.
except for the concessions.
That's a contractual.
That's a contract. That's the way our town code reads. That's just something we need to think about as we get closer to summer.
Well, I think we have to either adhere to what the thing is or modify it, right? I mean, I don't think it's a good practice for us to use our, own
I agree.
thing and just kind of do what we think is right,
And we don't want the town manager to be in the position of trying to decide.
Yeah, this you're okay and you're not, right?
Right.
That's that, yes.
That's what the town manager.
I think these activities exist on the beach because our residents and visitors want them on the beach. I think there's a conflict between what the public wants and what the code states. And that's what we need to figure out how to bridge.
So sorry for interrupting. It doesn't define what a contract is. So there could be formal agreements that are written contracts with. I think what Kate was presenting was to make it fair, that it would be open to bid. So it again isn't the town manager deciding, oh, I like skimboarding, I don't like camels. Sorry.
That's all right.
Right. So what you might consider doing is whether you need, again, to amend this existing language to allow for some types of commercial activities that you would vet somehow. You probably don't want to just, and I don't think the town manager wants to just be inundated with all these requests and make his own policies. I think you might want to think about what are traditional activities on the beach, what are activities that are not inconsistent with the public's enjoyment of the beach, and whether you can classify those in some way. It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, but I guess I'm looking at it, Fred, if and just not spitballing to a certain degree, if there was a category from a fee structure put in place, for example, that allowed for commercial activity on the beach, to say we amended the code, and that the organizations would need to be not approved or they need a license in a certain way. What I don't want to see, it doesn't matter what I want. So I'll put my resident hat on, take the mayor hat off. Don't want 1,000 people walking up and down the beach offering, stuff for sale.
Right.
I think we need to figure how to bridge section 87, 80.7, 80-7, and what the community is looking for.
And also to make sure they have the appropriate safeguards in place, such as the necessary insurance.
Glad you came up with that. Okay.
That's true.
It's true. So if we can make sure that it's on an agenda topic. Okay. All right. All right. Any other conversation? Okay. Thank you. Number 10, review preliminary fiscal year 2024 budget. We've all, just taking a break. Town manager, did you want to say anything specifically on this?
We are trying a new way to present the budget this year. Sheena's worked very hard with our, getting some guidance from different financial folks. She's been on webinars. She's attended some classes by Zoom. And she feels that this new presentation with the comment that's 12, 14 pages beforehand, with input from, example, the police department, from our administrative staff, from parking, from our building officials, from our alderman judge. All that was given to Sheena. She took that based on those comments, and then with my comments of inflation, how much it costs for our folks to live in this area now, she has come up with the current budget. It is rather lengthy, and it was a heck of an effort by her, but it's the preliminary, and we want Budget and Finance Committee to look at this. They are not meeting until after this meeting we're currently in, and we want their input in also on how they feel about where we can actually raise some funds in the town to meet these challenges. And for me, number one is decent pay for our employees, and number two, paying for the bills in the new town hall. So I don't know if you have any questions that you want to level to Sheena.
I'll open up for the commissioners in a second. And, you know, I will say that in having been part of the budget finance in the past and then becoming commissioner now as mayor, every year it gets better and better, more professional as we put forth as the reasons as to the why. We're getting there. When we were in the middle of COVID, we had no idea what was going to happen with the town. We were looking at the possible devastation of the budget of not actually coming after the beaches were closed by the governor. The process will continue to get better and will be more logical in terms of how we're going to get there. So Sheena did a great job thus far. And I'll just open up to the commissioners if you have any other comments or if you have any questions for Ms. Hall.
It took me hours. It probably took you months, but it took me hours to get through it. And I only have some really high level, and they're not even questions. Two things. I am so excited to see the technology upgrades that you have been able to do here in the town. And I'm excited to see what savings in people stress and time wasting that they can make for us. So that is fabulous. And I know it involved thinking in new ways. And I also was incredibly impressed to see that our training across sections of the town had increased over time. So we're spending more money making sure that everybody is trained and up to date. And those are fabulous expenditures.
David?
I have a lot of things I want to talk about, but I don't want to take so much time to go through it. So I'm kind of thinking, because I really didn't have time I looked at it like a day or two ago, and then I just really kind of dove into it today. I'm kind of thinking I'd just like to get some of your time next week and spend like half an hour with you on the phone, just kind of going through it, because I'm not going to drag everyone through that. I'm just not going to do it.
That's why it makes
It's
a
a great
meeting
piece
at
of
3
work, by the
o'clock on a
way.
Friday.
And the narrative, yeah, that's exactly, good thinking. The narratives really helped because it helps understand what's behind the numbers. So that, I thought that was very helpful, like in front of each section, kind of doing those narratives. So thank you for that.
Gary?
I do have some comments. My impression was, we had this issue already. We talked briefly about it. That is reallocating the portion of the hotel tax, at 50% of the hotel to the general fund. My impression is that the budget was developed with that assumption. It was reallocated to the general fund. And it may also be that it was developed without any other set-asides that we've been doing as well. It's a little hard to tell because particularly with the infrastructure account, we know that 20% of building permits are required by town code to go into an infrastructure escrow account. We have been allocating an additional 5% or 3% rather of transfer tax and 5% of daily and seasonal parking fees to the infrastructure account as well. I don't see that in there. It could be buried somewhere because now what you seem to have done is taken expenses that would normally be paid for out of one of those set-aside accounts, incorporated those into the budget. So there's a $250,000 streets and infrastructure spending line in the budget. And it may be that that's a combination of some of those previous set-asides as well as spending that comes out of the escrow account. I can't tell. I do not want to trade off planning for the future, which I believe we have done in allocating 50% of the hotel tax as we have. I don't want to trade that off for expanding current operations, which is essentially what we're talking about doing. I know there's an argument for increasing pay. There's an argument that in some cases that staff are overworked. I understand that, and we have to accommodate that. But I think there's got to be some middle ground here. I think we're not planning enough for the future, and we're trying to rely too much on the town's notion of what it needs to do its job. I think there's got to be some middle ground there. Two other points. One is a question. There's a $375,000 miscellaneous income. Doesn't seem to have any basis historically. I'm not sure what that's attributable to. Should be an easy question to answer. The last point I'll make is this. Our fund balance policy is set up to at 50% of operating expenditures. So last year, our fund balance was about $2.1 million based on, 4-point-something million dollars in expenditures. But we have been calculating that as expenditures less set-aside amounts. It's really based just on the cost of operating the town. So if you stick simply with the bottom line that you have in this budget, you're over $6 million in expenditures. You're not talking about increasing your fund balance, your rainy day fund is what I'm talking about. I'm sorry. But you're really talking about increasing the rainy day fund by $1 million. I don't know where you're going to get that.
If I could just make one quick comment, and I'll let you jump in, Sheena, is that the one thing when I first saw the budget earlier this week, obviously it's out there for anyone to see in terms of from a draft perspective. One of the things that I asked Ms. Hall to potentially put together, and I think it's consistent with what you're saying, is to understand the sources and uses of those funds. For example, we have received a $3 million grant from the state of Delaware. That $3 million grant sits on our balance sheet as a liability in unearned revenue, and we show $1 million of that being used potentially for town hall development in the budget. And it would be, from my perspective, and I think what you're saying, Commissioner Persinger, it'd be nice to also see a beginning balance of all the funds in terms of where they're expected to be at the end of the year, sources of those funds coming in, for example, that half of the hotel tax from an infrastructure perspective, and also uses, so that we can understand what truly is the general fund and for the general operations to fund the fund balance policy. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, that's fine.
I don't know the answer to the 350,000.
I've got your answers.
Okay.
Last year, Commissioner Persinger mentioned about Rehoboth getting a budget book award. I took it as a challenge. We were not ready. I was not ready. I looked at what Rehoboth did. I've been taking the classes, as Bill has said. I've been working hard on this. I've also talked with Dan King from formerly Cone Resnick. The budget, the one-page budget sheet, I think it's like the 5th or 6th item in, you will see that in the audit papers as the statement of activity. That shows exactly what cash comes in and what cash leaves, no matter where the funds come from. I do the only, unless I have misunderstood, the only set aside that is legislatively ordained by y'all is the 20% of the building permits. The 5% has is stuff that, hey, we really should do it. If it is in an ordinance or resolution, I can adjust for that. On the budget, it states under streets and infrastructure, there is a $110,000 charge for services. That is based on $550,000 transfer tax, 20% of that. One of the problems with the format that we've been using is, one, it was a commercial format. Second, with doing these set-asides, we were double counting for our money. We were showing it coming in and we were showing it going out twice. That is where we were having a problem. By doing this, all the money, the set-asides besides the 20%, are all going from, let's use the example of a pair of cargo pants. From your top left pocket to your bottom left pocket. The money is still in your pants. In our audit, they had stated that we were over in some of our expenditures. However, those were taken care of based on other funds within our general fund, such as grants that the police have gotten. The Sunset Park grant will be counted in that. By doing this, all the money stays in the same pair of pants, except that 20%. The $3 million that is for the town hall, and the $375 for the 5G poles, which is part of the revenue, the miscellaneous. As we use it, it is recognized revenue to offset the recognized expenses that we are now showing. So every bill from CTC we pay it, the expense shows there, and we recognize the revenue from that state money that's been sitting as a liability. That is now happening with all the grants from the police officers. We were not counting for them properly. Lieutenant Hocker has worked with me, been very patient with working with me on understanding the police grants. It has been very helpful. This past year, we've recognized $200,000 in street expenses that was paid for out of the set aside. And I think it gave Commissioner Persinger a few more gray hairs by seeing that large unbudgeted expense. We have to account for every expense, but we are now recognizing those funds, those set aside funds are now recognized revenue. Because when they originally came in as revenue, then they went out as an expense to the set aside. Now they're coming back in as revenue to offset the expense that they are set to pay for. I can definitely give the beginning balance, set asides, all that. That's easy. I try to, on the second page of, I guess it's page 7, state where everything, the grants and donations revenue received, what each of the grants, the general and administrative is ARPA money. The public safety was Edie, Sally, violent crimes, the different grants that Lieutenant Hocker worked so diligently on getting for us. The capital expenditures budget, which I forgot to include, I apologize. I did not count on changing the allocation of that. That was still allocated the way it should. It just still stays in the same pair of pants. I hope answers.
It does, well, does for me, I don't know about anybody else, but if I was to look at the sheet that you're referring to on the statement of activities, page 4, or I remember off the top of my head, and we look at the expense column, the general administrative, public safety and beat safety seem to me to be all expenses associated with the general operation. 1,813,565, 2,090,081, 525,891, less any capital expenditures that you may have had there that are part of the balance sheet. The charge for service is 2,561 plus the total general revenue of 224. Theoretically would be our old presentation of what revenues are coming in that current fiscal year.
Correct.
Okay. But streets and infrastructure purely is the old set asides and
Yes, sir.
use and
Yes, sir.
grants. Okay, all right.
And this is based, the budget, the umpteen zillion page budget at the back. Cone Resnick last year was gracious enough to give me their working paper that they do the financials from. And I basically took it and I'm now using that to put the budget together, the new financials, everything. So should go straight through.
I think what we need to do is there's two elements to the budget. One is, I think there's a lot of work done. We're looking at the end result of a lot of steps and a little bit of an education of how we stepped to here. And so that we can, it's almost like learning Spanish at freshman year of high school, try to translate it so that it's clear to understand where all those components are coming from. I have one goal is that after we do go through this process and we finalize the budget, I also believe that and I would, putting this out there in the public so you have it, I'd be open to actually having understanding the Dewey Beach budget and understanding for the public as well as the Dewey Beach partnerships or partnership for them to understand where the funds are coming from and how they're being used to clear up any misunderstandings that either residents or business owners might have.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Could I make a comment?
Yes, Commissioner Persinger.
First of all, Sheena, you're certainly correct that the only set aside that we have in the code is the 20% for the infrastructure escrow account. But there are specific votes in the record where we have established those other percentages, the other set asides. 50% of the hotel tax, 5% of, well, there are a couple of different percentages of transfer tax that come out. And then 5% also of seasonal and daily parking fees. So, we can certainly change that, but I think we need to change that affirmatively with some sort of a vote. Maybe that's just a part of the budget process. But what I would understand is the only set aside that you incorporated in this budget is just the 20% of building permits. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And as far as, I forgot to, this was one of your other questions, as far as the rainy day fund at the end of the year, to make us match. I was told last year by Cone Resnick, I take that from when after March 31st is done, I take and do the transfer from our general fund to the rainy day from FY23's revenues or bottom line, so that we're prepared for the next year. We have still been adding to it, but we do it at the end.
But it's based on the expenditures.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if we stick with expenditures at over $6 million, where do we get $1 million to put in the rainy day fund?
What is in our general fund right now in the general operating fund? It's just a movement, a general.
Why don't we walk, instead of taxing everyone's time on this, Gary, I see what you're saying, and from my perspective on this summary of activity sheet that she had, that's the second. It's after the. Is it the second page in the packet that you put together?
It is, ends up being like the third or fourth,
Okay.
I think, but
There are elements. It's not $6.1 million, if I understand. $6,174,000 from the general fund. There's some elements of our ongoing activities that are streets and infrastructure. For example, I assume you put building code in there?
yes, sir.
Okay. So there's some elements that need to be stripped out, but I think there needs to be clarity as to what is general operating that will then calculate into what goes into the rainy day fund versus use of set asides.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, so just one other question. Do we still have 2.1 million or so in a fund for the new town hall?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I will be quiet now.
I enjoy your input. It
That
challenges you.
challenges us.
I should say, I certainly commend and applaud Sheena on all the hard work that she has done on this. I know she's put in a lot of time. She spent a lot of time moving toward a government type accounting system, which is where we should be. And so I thank you for that, and I do applaud you for the effort you put in.
Well, you might as well stay there for just 1 second. No other discussions on the 2024 budget. We also had the next item is to review the December financials. Any questions from the commissioners on the December financials?
No, they look great.
Assume you actually looked at them. All right. Thank you, Ms. Hall.
Thank you.
All right. Final element of our agenda, comments, town manager.
So we will be closed Monday for Martin Luther King Day, observing that. That's following with the county holiday schedule. I'd also like to thank Lieutenant Hocker for being the acting officer in charge of the police department since Chief Macker left.
Lieutenant Hocker.
We have had another officer leave our department to pursue a career in another police agency in the state. So we are actively pursuing an officer to fill that vacancy, either certified or non-certified, and that's been put out through our webpage and Facebook.
Lieutenant, is that something we go through the academy, or is it just that, or we're looking for somebody? Is that how? I was just curious.
Either or.
Either or. Okay. Commissioner Bauer.
No comments at this time, other than I'd also like to commend Lieutenant Hawker for his hard work and stepping in during that period of time from chief until now.
Commissioner Givings.
Nothing now, thank you.
Commissioner Jazinski.
No comments.
Commissioner Persinger.
No comments.
The only comment that I have is one to echo a thanks to Lieutenant Hawker for everything he continues to do for us, but also to remind everyone that we have the Dewey Beach Gala coming up at the end of the month. I hope that we have great attendance and hope we have great weather. And with that being said, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, see you, everybody.
So